Fed Chair Jerome Powell reiterating that rate cuts are likely to happen this year during his second day of testimony on Capitol Hill. With that in mind, though, when it comes to the number of cuts, Minneapolis Fed President Neil Kashkari says with recent data, he sees 2 rate cuts at most this year. Well, joining me now is Dennis Lockhart, former president of the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta. Thank you for joining me this morning. So first I want
Thank
to
you
start
for having me on.
Of course. I want to start with what we've heard, this careful balancing act that Fed Chair Powell is doing, clearly waiting for more consistent data on inflation, but at least signaling that rate cuts are ahead. Looking, though, at perhaps 2 rate cuts or fewer, according to Kashkari, where do you see things landing? Is that enough, given the strength of the economy?
Well, the best indication we have is the so-called dot plots from the December Summary of Economic Projections. And those dots showed, I think, 4 people at 2, 5 or 6 at 3, and 4 at 4 cuts. So it was a range from 2 to 4. And obviously, Neil Kashkari is in the 2 camp and has remained in that 2 camp, perhaps. But I don't think the committee really knows quite yet. When they begin the process, the cadence will be a cautious one. So it could be as few as 2 cuts, but if the data are accommodating, it could be 3 or even 4.
So, Dennis, what is it about the consistency of the inflation data that we've seen so far that's giving the Fed pause?
Well, the January numbers showed, let's just say, a deviation from the expected continued march downward in the inflation rate. Looks like it might have been a pause or a stall, but it's 1 month, and they're not going to overreact to 1 month. So they really have to step back and look at the totality of the inflation data and decide what is the underlying trend and get very confident that that underlying trend is headed toward 2%. And nothing in data is just predictable or absolutely linear, and so they have to proceed cautiously to make sure they're reading the numbers correctly.